All right, we are live, and as usual, I'm Douglas Ferguson, and today I'm joined with Joshua Davies. Good to have you, Josh.
Thanks for inviting me, Douglas. It's good to be here.
Yeah,
Hello from Hong
so
Kong.
no doubt, no doubt. So we're both just big fans of the tech aspect of navigating the virtual world. And we both, I don't know if it was as much therapy for you as it was for me, but part of it was not only figuring out how to deliver a stellar experience for my customers and any attendees that come to my events, but also it was such a nice way to just take my mind off the insanity that was around me.
Exactly. It's the artist Miranda July.
Yes.
So I'm like obsessed. So she does like these crazy multimedia experiential shows that are using like projections and all this kind. I mean, she's a filmmaker as well, but she's really also known for like experiential art. And for me, it was really that. It was like, how can we push the envelope of what's possible in a virtual experience to try to give someone something that when they come into it, they don't have that webinar bag hanging over their heads where, oh, this is another webinar where I'm just going to tune out and, click some buttons. But how do you create a really meaningful virtual experience, which I know that you all at the Voltage Control team with all the Control the Room app and all that kind of fun stuff, you're definitely playing with that space. So it's just cool to see the different ways people are pushing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I think you hit on a nasty word, which is webinar, and and it's funny.
No.
Like I anyone who's doing a webinar about collaboration is just like that's just so ironic that if you don't see the irony in that, then maybe
I literally had a client who's next week we're doing a giant session, 200 people dialing in from all over Asia. And it was on how do we create more engaging virtual experiences, but they wanted to do it in a webinar format initially. And I'm like, wait, what? It's not just, we had a dialogue. We finally were able to get them to a place where they're allowing quite a bit more. But we want to make sure it's that we have full control over it. What was the Tyagi quote? Trust your audience. Just trust your audience a bit more, and as long as you've got the multiple possible streams of different choose your own adventure paths you can go on as a facilitator, then what's the worst that can happen? You're going to have an interesting experience, an authentic. I'd rather have an authentic experience where the tech breaks a bit than a boring, perfectly glossy produced webinar.
That's right. And the thing is people are going to walk away with a much better impression of that experience, regardless of how glossy it is. And in fact, the expectations of production value go way, 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 way down if they're participating. So it's kind of a no-brainer, right? It's like, sure, we're going to deliver as good of an experience as we can, but as soon as we start engaging them, all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, this is not a prepared thing. They're going to be emergent qualities. And that's the beauty of it.
Exactly. And that's why I know that you use like Miro, collaborative whiteboards, that kind of stuff. I always love that phrase, physical places and digital spaces. This idea of how can we actually create a sense of place? Is that whole Churchill quote, we shape after they shape us. And so I think it's just like this cool idea of if we shape, even if it's rougher, if it's less high production values, if we shape a space, the kind of conversations that can pour into it using, Volta Control app, using a bunch of the other tools like Benji or something in that space that you can actually create with it, it's just so much different. I mean, like even with like Miro or Mural, one of the best ways to like lower the barrier is just having like a graffiti area there where we're encouraging people to just go ugly, to make a mess. Because once you've gotten people making a mess, this authenticity just begins to come out in the conversation.
Yeah, I think you're creating safety, right? Because if folks feel like they don't understand the rules or they're worried they're going to mess things up, they tiptoe around, and they're not going to doesn't necessarily bring their best self or put stuff forward through.
100%. The phrase we always use for like psychological safety is this idea: do you want people as passengers, performers, or participants? And, passengers, they're just passive, they're sitting back. Performers, they're having the conversation, but it's a performative aspect. It's they're putting on a mask, they're putting on a show, they're checking the box. I am here, I am in this workshop, I am learning, and they're not really. They're just kind of, putting their face out there. Or are they actually lowering their barriers down and really becoming true participants and co-creators of whatever sort of beautiful mess you end up with? That whole idea of a potluck, where everyone's bringing something.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, and we often talk about the need for intersectionality and how ideas come together and really blossom. And if we're not creating a space for that or conditions for that, or then it's almost impossible. And we were talking a bit about the tech earlier, right? And hybrid's going to be an interesting space, or I would say constraints around how do we create opportunities or encourage folks to come create that beautiful mess. Like and I've been referring to it lately as the point of engagement. And that's how we're about to release our hybrid guide. And we talk about, you have to decide what your point of engagement is and ensure that that point of engagement is a space, to use your word,
100%,
where folks, no matter where they're showing up from, how they're accessing, they can get to that space. They can get to that point where we're all going to intersect. We're all going to share. Where's that beautiful mess going to happen? What's the nexus of the beautiful mess?
100%. I mean, it's that idea, because if there isn't that shared collaborative space that's really creating ownership of the learning space or the innovation space, whatever kind of stuff you're working on, it's painful. So you've probably seen it. There's a lot of that really good research on in-group and out-group dynamics. A lot of it, cross-culturally based, that kind of stuff. But hybrid, where you've got some people face-to-face and some people virtually training, it's bringing all of these in-group, out-group dynamics to the scene. And if a facilitator, along with their producer potentially, is not managing them well, you're really creating almost two classes of citizens within the learning space. And that's not we want to be creating. It's just like, okay, so I'm flipping back and forth between these two spaces, but there's ways around it, but it is challenging, definitely. What are you doing from like a technological perspective, using either the app that your team's created or other things? I'm just kind of curious, because I know you've got the nice hybrid guide that just came out.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we recommend is, the tech's going to keep changing, so always watch out for what's emerging. And we took a stance with the guide that like we're all going to enter into a period of experimentation as more offices open up, as people get more comfortable flying, meeting. But there's certainly going to be folks that can't attend for whatever reason or can't be there in person, and so we're going to be forced into these hybrid situations, whether we think they're ideal or not. And so be prepared to address them and just know about some of the pitfalls and watch the tech that's emerging, because you've got stuff already happening with WebEx where they're taking a video feed and doing facial detection and chopping it up into individual feeds.
Yep.
Right. They're already doing this stuff, and so there's more to come, guaranteed.
Yeah. And with Teams, some of the NVIDIA eye tracking stuff, where like right now I'm looking at you, but if I'm over here looking at you, I'm not. And that NVIDIA stuff where they've got it where it's actually basically using deep fake to self-correct for that. So it always makes you feel as though you've got that at least illusion of eye contact. It's really interesting to see the stuff that's being done in that space to try to create a shared space. I'm actually kind of curious. At least from my perspective, I don't know how much you've been looking at this, but just in terms of the onboarding and creating that sense of welcome at the beginning, I always love that the Danish word, the hygge, that sense of warmth, which I'm still pronouncing really badly, and my good Danish friend is going to yell at me for pronouncing it wrong again. But that sense of really warmth, and how do we get people to have rituals of welcome? where it's no longer, I don't just mean like an icebreaker. Honestly, people to some extent, I'm not saying icebreakers are bad, but a lot of typical icebreakers, people are icebreakered out. So it's, how can we create a sense where we're leaving what was probably more of just a boring drop your brain off in another room meeting and bringing people into a place where they're going to have real engagement?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors there, right? There's the lack of intentionality in most icebreakers where people just go, let's just warm people up. Well,
exactly.
What does that have to do with the content, and how does that help me check into my brain what we're about to do versus what I was just doing? You know, I think about it like Superman or Clark Kent changing from Superman or from Clark Kent into Superman. He has to go into the telephone booth and out emerge as Superman. So what is your telephone booth that you need to insert at the beginning of your meeting so they can transform from Clark Kent to Superman or whatever, right? Whatever transformation you need to happen, because expecting people to flip a switch on your command is like, it's not going to happen, right?
It's like when someone demands people to be innovative. It's like, oh, be innovative, be engaged. You need to be engaged in the session. Why? Because I'm getting paid to be here. Engaged with me. It's, you got to invite them into the space. You've got to create a sense of real curiosity and problem solving. And it's just this, there's nothing worse where people try to like really rush it through the session. And it's just like, bam, bam, checking the box off along that agenda. How can we get through that? Rather than how can we actually create a real seamless narrative overall, where it's taking this activity here and whatever was created here gets carried forward into what's done next. So it feels like there's that sense of momentous building throughout the entire session. Like we're actually creating momentum. We're building towards something. It's not just line item by line item. And I don't know, from my perspective, that really creates a lot more positive ownership of the space.
Yeah. And, you know, I think part of it too is tapping into the humanity and really like connecting with the people that are there. And that requires understanding who's going to be there before they're there. So that you can plan accordingly and make sure you're kind of ushering them into the space, right? And then the other thing, you reminded me of the story. I think I was in the ninth, or I think it was the 10th grade, and my chemistry teacher, it was like the last day of class for the year, so we're all finishing chemistry, and she took roll, so she had her little roll book out and she was going through and taking names. And then she slams her book shut, which was very not normal of her. You know, she was very kind of reserved, and she slams it shut with a lot of like force. And she goes, "Let's party." Because she had planned on, we were going to have Kool-Aid and cookies or something for like the end of the year
beautiful
party. And I was like, okay, like that's hilarious. That's how, like, I think everyone was just a little bit shocked, you know, that transition from like this like mundane roll call to her just shouting "Let's party" didn't really usher people into that journey effectively. And I think a few people laughed.
That I mean, it definitely woke people up. It definitely was a moment of, wow, okay, this is, brain pays attention to what's different. I mean, I remember my teacher, Mr. Layton, in 8th grade, and his greeting in class every day was, "How the hell are you?" And it was just this authenticity, this warmth that was just so different. Sarah Beth is in the chat. She mentioned about Priya Parker. Yes, very much. Priya Parker's Art of Gathering is spot on brilliant. The other one I also really like that speaks to that idea is Chip and Dan Heath. You know, they wrote Made to Stick, but they also wrote the and for me, that's actually my favorite book by them. I mean, Made to Stick is spot on brilliant, but I think it's called The Power of Moments.
It's got a jar with lightning.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And it's just a framework for looking at how you can create a different sense of being somewhere and like, this is a spot that we want to remember. Because I mean, you think back about like the whole last 10 years of your life. Yeah, there's going to be, or even the last year of your life, even the blur that has been the year of pandemics, there are still these moments. And some of them are just random and arbitrary, but some of them were constructed. And unpacking those ones that were purposely constructed to create a meaningful moment is something that's really interesting to look at. What went into that, and how can we do that? How can we give that to the people who are coming to our sessions?
Man, I think that is a powerful way to end. I'm a huge fan of that book as well, and I recommend anyone check that book out. And as Sarah Beth Burke mentioned in the comments, Art of the Gathering is great. And Sarah, thank you so much for all the comments. Everything you've been sharing is spot on. If anyone doesn't know Sarah Beth, she was on my podcast a bit ago and has a really awesome book about being more than your job title and the hybrid individual. And like, we can't ignore the hybrid individual in this space of, or this giant conversation around hybrid work. So she's awesome. Josh is awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Josh.
Thanks,
and
Douglas.
You're going to be doing Facilitation Lab later this week. So excited to have you join the community.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.